prince. His name was Prince Amun-Herkhobshif, the son of King Ramses III, dating back to the 20th dynasty, 10th century BC, and this belongs to a young prince who died in his early teens. During the time of Ramses III, Egypt was changing from a huge empire into just a strong kingdom. These were the last glorious days of Egypt. Egypt had faced several threats and several challenges. The first one was the invasion of the Sea People, and the Sea People, they were the greatest danger of the whole area. They succeeded in a few years in destroying the tomb of the Hittites. That was the biggest rival of the ancient Egyptian empire. The Sea People, we don't know exactly where their origins came from, but we think they are Indo-European tribes that had lived on the Western Mediterranean. And Indo-European, yes. They lived on the Western Mediterranean, and their descendants, they live now in the area called Anatolia in Turkey. And some of them, they live in Libya. Some of the Libyans are their descendants as well, because they formed a big alliance with the Libyans. But at that time, the significance of this was that Egypt had stopped from being an empire into fighting defensive wars. And this was the beginning of the end of Egypt as a big empire. That's why we say that the days of Ramses III were the last glorious days of Egypt. Also, Egypt had faced an economic crisis. Remember when I was talking about the devaluation of metals and strike and all that? This had happened during the time of Ramses III as well. Also, Egypt was struck by an epidemic in those days, probably the plague. And obviously it had killed so many people to the extent that it had got to the royal palace, where the royal children have the best kind of life, the best medical care, and yet the pharaoh himself was not really an exception from the plague. So two of his sons died, which we're going to see one of the tombs of them, of his sons. Actually, when you go inside the tomb, you will notice that the tomb is very simple. The tomb is really very famous for its simplicity and its beauty. It's not always that the complicated designs can form the most beautiful tombs. On the contrary, most of them, or all the most beautiful tombs, they came with very simple designs. It consists of one corridor with some side chambers for the storage of the funerary furniture, ending with a burial chamber with a small stone sarcophagus, because, as I said, the deceased was a young teenager. Actually, you will notice that all the scenes, when you enter the first section of the tomb, when you go to the left-hand side, you will see that the prince, represented with the side lock of hair, holding the folded ostrich feather fan. Of course, the fan bearers to the right and the left-hand side of the pharaoh, they were always from the royal children. He could not trust anyone to get so close to him except his own flesh and blood. Even in the battlefield, the bodyguards of the pharaoh in the battlefield were always his sons. And you will notice that he's got the side lock of hair as a sign of childhood in ancient Egypt. And it's the pharaoh who's playing the premier role in every religious scene. It's the pharaoh who's embracing Isis, and Isis is giving him the Manet necklace, and then and his son is behind him. Then he's introducing him to the four sons of Horus, the protectors of the viscera of the deceased: Imesti, Hapi, Duamut F, Qibh Sinu F, the baboon-headed, the falcon-headed, the human-headed, and the jackal-headed sons of Horus. And then you will continue to the rear section of the tomb. Just before you get to the burial chamber, you will see a representation of a section from the Book of the Dead known as the Book of the Gates. But this representation is very unique. We've never seen it anywhere before like this. So simple, so beautiful, and so expressive. The gate of the underworld, and the demon who guards that gate holding the two knives, and the magical hieroglyphic text that by reading it, the deceased will be protected from that demon and the gate will be open to him to go through it, through to the underworld. Actually, you will notice that the prince, at this point, is not represented with his father anymore. He is on his own, as if the previous section was just his father introducing him to the gods who are going to help him to cross the gates of the underworld. But when it comes to the gates of the underworld, no, the father is still alive. This is the border gate between the living and the dead. The king cannot go over there, and that explains why he was introducing him to different deities at the first section of the tomb. Inside the burial chamber you will find a glass vatrin that has got a fetus, which is 3 or 4 months old fetus, and this fetus was found on buried by the entrance of the tomb when this tomb was discovered by the Italian expedition in 1903. Actually, most of the excavations over here were done between 1903 and 1905 by an Italian expedition. And obviously that this was not a royal fetus. If it was a royal fetus, it would have been properly mummified and buried in a small sarcophagus with great deal of honor and dignity. But it seems to be that during the Roman times, when many people, because of the Roman taxation system, had escaped and abandoned the agricultural land, and they came over here and lived in the desert, and it seems to be that a family was living over here and the lady of the family was miscarried, so they buried the deceased at the entrance of the tomb, hoping that by the mercy of the prince he would be resurrected with him to serve him in the afterlife. أنا معايا 31 هتدخلهم على مرتين ولا مرة واحدة؟ Okay.
What year was that with the plague and stuff?
10th century BC, about 1050 BC.
Okay.
So ladies and gentlemen, we'll be split on 2 groups so that, because the tomb is not really very big, so we'll go on 2 halves. I'll be waiting over there, and please, before you get into the tomb, leave your cameras over there in these shelves, and I will be there watching out for them.